a special meeting of the North Miami Planning Commission for Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. At this time, I'd like to stand and do our Pledge of Allegiance, which we haven't been able to do for almost a year and a half. Please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, stand, nation, under God, indivisible, liberty. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, may we have call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Chairman Charles Ernst.
Present.
Commissioner Naomi Bleemer. Commissioner Michael McDermott.
Present.
Commissioner Kenny. Commissioner Robert Besson. Commissioner Hector Medina.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Before we get to the new members' introduction, I just want to check with staff if there's any amendments to the agenda this evening.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce two new members of the Planning Commission, and also like to get a little background with them, as they could tell us a little bit about themselves, and we welcome them. Let's start with Naomi Bleemer, is that correct? Last Bleemer. Great. Naomi?
Your microphone.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. It is a great honor and a privilege for me to serve on the Planning Commission for the City of North Miami. I'm a small business owner here. I have been a resident for the past 7 years. My small business is not too far away from here. I practice accounting and have a small boutique firm that provides marketing and branding solutions for small business owners. I'm also the co-founder for Balancing Life. It is a nonprofit organization that assists individuals in balancing 4 aspects of their lives: their spirituality, their emotions, their finances, and their education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and it's such a pleasure to have a small business owner on board. I too am one here in the city of North Miami, and it's great to have you on board.
It's great to be here.
Great. And next is Hector Medina. Hector, good evening.
Good evening.
Sir.
It is an honor to be here. I am a retired medical doctor. I guess my last job was a rancher in Oklahoma. I ran an operation there. We built a ranch, and it was pretty big, so I'm pretty sure that I'm quite familiar with zoning, since I had to put a road, electric, and water. So the government didn't give me a sense, not I wanted any. But yes, I know what I'm doing about zoning. I'm also the former director of clinical services for Planned Parenthood of Arkansas and Oklahoma, and a superintendent of the largest family shelter in the United States of America, with like 5,000 people. So I got a lot of background on public service, from 7 years with the City of New York all the way to Planned Parenthood and Catholic Charities in Oklahoma, and in between a bunch of other jobs. But mainly what I did was take care of my son, who's hemophiliac, and when he was born, 90% of kids with his disease died, unfortunately, so I wasn't going to allow that to happen to my kid, so I took care of him for 12 years. And he's very healthy, and he's doing fine.
Oh,
That's it.
Thank you, Hector. We certainly welcome and we'll value your opinion. We're happy that you've joined our panel. All right, moving on. Next item we have is the approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Mr. McDermott.
Before we approve these minutes, I have a question, if I may.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So it is my understanding that several of the members who approved this agenda, several of them were not. They were already the appointment was expired. It is, and this is a personal question, because I don't want any problems in the future. is it legal or ethical to approve these minutes since they were not, their term has expired and all these votes were taken?
I can defer that to council.
So, Mr. Chair, actually, there's an item later in the agenda under new business ratification of the Planning Commission recommendations where we were going to discuss that. However, I can take a minute and discuss it at this point if you prefer.
Certainly.
So a question was raised previously as to the timing of the Planning Commission's June meeting with respect to Planning Commission members' terms of office. And my research is that that question can be resolved through a ratification of the actions taken, specifically the advisory recommendations made at that meeting. Since this is an advisory board, all the actions taken are advisory to the City Council. So Florida case law recognizes that it is the agency, or in this case the municipality, that should address that issue. And it is the City Council that would act on behalf of the municipality in doing so. So therefore, and it's my understanding that the City Council has ratified the recommendations of the Planning Commission made at its June meeting through its acceptance of the Commission's recommendations at the City Council meeting subsequent thereto in July. And I believe Ms. Warren can confirm this. So it is entirely appropriate for you to, at a minimum, approve the minutes and also to recognize that what has been done has been ratified. So there will be no formal request for action by the Commission since the City Council has addressed the issue.
And the city attorney concurs with this.
Yes, the city,
also.
we do concur, and anyone who watched the council meeting on July 13th, they did take into consideration the bulk of the agenda from this meeting, and the question was raised to the city attorney at that time, and his advice was consistent with counsel to the board, which is that since the Planning Commission's function is advisory in its role, that the mayor and council are not bound by the recommendation. They can proceed.
Right. Regardless of what the vote was.
Correct.
So any other kind of action, would there have been a need for ratification, would been basically the point would be moot because of the fact that they've already ratified it and they would only take it under consideration
Right.
as an advisory.
It would be a different situation if there was final action by this Commission, but none of the actions that are being requested of the Commission on any of your agendas are final action.
Right. Okay, very good. Mr. Medina?
Yeah, but,
Any other questions?
yeah, my question wasn't the council approved or disapproved.
Right.
The question is that, so this body is irrelevant if the recommendation of the body was made by the people that were not supposed to be here in the first place, the recommendation null and void, or because they were
No,
not
the council had decided to accept the recommendations.
of a board that wasn't duly elected?
Well,
and
some
also-
of the members, at least some of the members, had a term that continued. It wasn't all of the members that whose term had expired, and the council had the authority and discretion to recognize the board as seated, even if it was only in a temporary state between the appointment of term. So it was in their authority to do so.
And that's the answer I was looking for.
With regard to the minutes, you're perfectly able to abstain if you decline to approve.
Okay, sir. All right, we'll move on then. Again, I'm going to ask for approval of the minutes. We have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Each. All right.
Motion?
I'm sorry?
The motion?
Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. McDermott made the a motion, seconded by Mr. Each. All right. Okay, moving on to next item. Do we have communications from staff or the council?
Yes, as a reminder, your next planning commission You all moved it from 7 for a holiday, so it will be Thursday, at
September
7.
Thursday,
Yes, sir.
okay, September 9th. All right, I haven't looked that far in advance of my calendar, but I think that's okay with me.
You all have voted on that 4 meetings ago.
All right, okay, you're correct. All right. Any continued public hearings?
No, sir.
None? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to the item that we have on the agenda tonight, and it is PC 17-21.
There was not a vote for the approval of the minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, you're correct.
Okay.
We have a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Uh, And opposed,
I abstain.
and one abstention.
Excuse me. I gotta ask a question. I understood that we either vote yea or nay, but we cannot abstain. That was my understanding
well-
when we were appointed to the board.
I think that is typically, but as far as minutes, I mean, this isn't an item on the merit. So I didn't have a problem with Dr. Medina abstaining rather than taking a position either way. I don't think he would be in any ethical jeopardy for taking an abstention. But typically, the rule, as Mr. Each points out, is that you either should vote in favor or against, or excuse yourself. So
If there's a conflict.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, okay, good, thank you very much. So we do have the one abstention does stand, and the other votes are yea. All right, moving on to continue public hearing again. Do we have any continued public hearing, staff?
No, sir.
None, all right. And our public hearing tonight, as mentioned before, is PC 17-21. This is an ordinance of the mayor and the city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending chapter 29 of the city of North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Land Development Regulations, specifically at section 5-101, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures. Established a new section 5-611 to allow mobile food dispensing vehicles to operate in particular areas of the city, subject to certain standards, sections 5-1903 and Article 7, entitled Definitions, in accordance with sections 509, period 102, parenthesis 2, Florida Statutes 2020, section 3-302, and sections 3-1004 through 3-1007 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Chapter 29, entitled Land Development Regulations, providing for repeal, conflicts, severability, codification, and an effective date. May we have staff report, please?
Yes, sir. This item before you is an amendment to the LDRs, establishing a new section, amending the accessory use table, and amending the definitions. This is, let's see, can you bring it up on the screen? There we go. So what you have is this particular ordinance is sponsored by both Councilman Galvin as well as Councilwoman Timothy. And Florida statute recently, the state recently passed a preemption upon, a limited preemption on any type of what they define as mobile food dispensing vehicles. This is everything from the typical food truck to one of those that you tow behind. We can't prohibit them. So what we want to do is to put land use controls as well as some regulatory controls, operational controls, so that while we can't prohibit them, we can at least control them in fashion. And it's also, it's certainly an economic engine. There's a lot of interest in these. We get a lot of requests for them through special temporary use, our temporary use permit for special events. This would actually allow them to operate in a longer term, be hosted by a property owner in a longer term. So it's an accessory use. You'll see that we've amended the accessory use table to allow them in all the commercial districts, the industrial districts, the public use districts. They're allowed elsewhere in the city in the residential through a temporary use permit via a special event, which they're currently allowed to anyway. So now we're just trying to codify and have a set of regulations that will govern these and give us some control over how they're placed. So let's start with the challenge with Florida statute is that it says that you can't really prohibit them. It also says you can't charge them permit fees. You can't charge them anything. You can't make them get a special license. So this particular ordinance focuses more on the host, the property owner who wants to host these vehicles on a longer term basis. So, but it also then governs operational standards for those as part of a special event under the temporary use, because there are no controls currently for how they operate, where they're placed on the site or anything. So we're going to start from that. The property owner is required to, who wants to host a long-term, has to get administrative site plan approval. So they have to go through DRC, they'll get administrative site plan approval, and staff, the zoning staff would review the application consistent with all the operational standards as well as the locational standards within the new ordinance. They also have to have a business tax license from the city. It's not a permit fee, it's a tax, so it's not subject to that limitation, in case you were wondering. And they may have to get a certificate of use. A certificate of use is required for any business who is based in the city. But if you're, say, an AC guy and your business is actually in Aventura and you're just working here in the city, you're required to get a business tax license, but not certificate of use. But if you're based here in the city, they're based in the city, they would also have to get a certificate of use. As I noted earlier, we added the definition. This definition that's in Article 7 is the exact definition from Florida statute. It's always better to just use their definition than to try to create a brand new definition. So we know it's consistent. So the ordinance also establishes operational standards, everything from how it can be, where it can be placed on the site. It has to be unpaved. It can't be, you're going to use parking spaces. It can't take away from the business. It can't be stuck out on the street. It's very specific. It provides guidance that's not there now. They also have to provide litter receptacles. They have to take away the litter from their, as far as what they generate, as well as their patrons. And something that's we thought was fairly important is that they can't prepare food and serve food outside of the vehicle itself. And then we wanted to limit how much signage they could have. Otherwise, they just have signs everywhere. So while they can have the signage, whatever signage is on the vehicle, they also can have one A-frame sign, sort of like that up there, where they have like a menu board or something along those lines. Same thing with the dining furniture. Right now, through the site plan approval process, a food truck can have some dining furniture, but we want to limit that dining furniture so it's not spread out all over the place. They have to provide sanitary facilities. The property owner would have to make sure that there were bathrooms, sanitary facilities for both the patrons as well as the employees of that food truck. So these are all conditions of approval. What was the other one here? One of the things that we really think is important is not to have loud music. Somebody with a bullhorn out there, come over here and eat this fruit, from this food truck, it's awesome. So we want to prohibit that kind of activity. You don't want to have all that noise carrying on. We also said, look, while you can have like a koozie or a cup or a t-shirt that is branded from your restaurant or your food truck, you can't sell anything other than food and beverage. It's not, you can sell trinkets and all the other stuff. No, these are food dispensing vehicles. It's important We are proposing limit them to 2 per site. We are not proposing a specific number of days that you can have them, but a maximum of 2. You can host a maximum of 2. We really didn't want to leave them out on the site overnight. So you have to take it back
Can you
away.
discuss the rationale,
Which one here?
overnight parking?
Oh, yes. It's very similar to leaving a business truck outside. We really did not want to have overnight parking outside. It tends to then stay there. So we wanted them to take it away and bring it back every day. It provides a clean site. Then they have to reset up every day. You all can make recommendations otherwise, but staff believes that after reviewing some of the other communities that do this, that seems to be something they have done in reaction to situations that have occurred. So we're recommending that. We are also recommending that, this is important for everybody, any business, they need to display their health department, their DVBR license. They need to have it ready so that we can make sure that they have all of their stuff that they need to have, and including food handling and all those other things. So the next step, is scheduled for first reading before City Council on 8/24. We expect second reading to be on September 14th. It would become effective 10 days, assuming City Council adopts it on second reading. It becomes effective 10 days. All ordinances become effective 10 days, not all, but in this case, this one does, after it's adopted. That is the end of staff's presentation, and I am available for any questions you might have.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Love. Okay, at this point, before we move on to commission response and comment, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and ask staff, did we receive anything from people that are not present? Did we receive any communications from them at all? Madam Secretary?
No, we did not receive any communication.
Okay, so we have no written comments that have been submitted?
No.
Okay, very good. So now the public hearing is open to anyone wishing to address this that may be in attendance. We see none. This is going once, going twice, and the public hearing is now closed. And we'll go ahead and listen to response from our planning commissioners. I'd like to go ahead and have Ms. Blimmer, you get the honor to make your first comment tonight on this matter. If you have anything to add or any questions to the staff.
I mean, at face value, it seems like a great opportunity for small business owners, specifically those that are in this line of business. I just wanted to ask, are we going to take any steps to ensuring that the areas that they are parked remains clean even after they leave? Because, I mean, I love stopping at a food truck, but I know that the vicinity of the area sometimes does not stay clean. So are we going to take any steps to ensure that happens?
The ordinance very specifically tells them that they are required to provide receptacles as well as clean up at the end of the day, the end of their operation. And so if they don't do that, it's a code violation. So once you get code violation, you lose your opportunity as a property owner unless you quickly resolve that. We're going to be very tight with this. Code enforcement will be very tight on that. That's important. That's the reason we put it in the ordinance, because we have the same concern that you just.
I believe that is addressed in Division 16, Standards for Specific Uses, Section 5-611, if you want to.
In the new section under the operational standards, if you look on, let's see, D and number 5. That was an excellent question. Staff actually thought the same thing. They want to make sure they clean up after themselves. Some places I've noticed that they actually have a radius that you have to, not just around your food truck, but like 25 feet around your food truck. About 25 feet around
Right.
your food truck. I don't know that we may want to go to that level of detail. Staff didn't feel that that was, because it should be more on the site by site, because you could have another food truck right there.
Right.
You could have 2 food trucks back to back.
And also the event organizers also responsible should it be a part of a big event. I know I've experienced that with events that I've worked up in Fort Lauderdale. They're very strict about that. And the event organizers also responsible for making sure that that area is clean, and they could get, in some cases in Fort Lauderdale, they will fine you or at least cite you for not
So remember,
cleaning up.
this is the property owner who is required to do that as well, because it's a code violation for him as well. So it's not just the operator of that vehicle, that food truck, let's use that term. It really is also the responsibility of the property owner. Sure.
Okay, and the next question that I have, will they have a responsibility to be out there consistently for, let's say, for instance, they're going to be out there Monday through Friday from this time to this time, or it's based on their choice when they choose to come?
It's tied to the hours of operation of the business where they're being host.
Okay.
So they can only operate during the same business hours of the host business.
For example, if I had an event and I was going to use one of their services, if my event is from 4 to 6, then they would be out there from 4 to 6.
Well, it depends. If the business, they could have a breakfast thing. They
Okay.
could have so whatever hours of operation that business is operating,
Okay,
they are able to be there only during those,
got it.
whatever they choose within that time.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Is that it? Thank you. Thank
Those
you,
are great
Mr. Monroe.
questions.
Mr. McDermott, sir, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I think that this is a well-drafted ordinance. I think it codifies and places the permits and all the other regulations in place of something that's already happening. And I think now that through this ordinance, it'll be much more organized and be, in the long run, much more beneficial, because more businesses will be more inclined to use it. So, I think pretty well drafted.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Mr. Medina, sir. I don't know if I should call you doctor or Mr. Medina.
When I'm in official business, I prefer doctor.
Okay,
You
sir.
can call me Hector.
Okay, great, Mr. Medina.
I want to thank the staff. This is a good drafted, as McDermott said, ordinance. I have several questions.
Yes, sir.
You said that they're required to have sanitary facilities. And what is that, a porta potty, or
Whatever
are
it
they
is
going to
that
have
they
a place
produce.
where to wash their hands?
Whatever they have, you can use a porta potty. They can make arrangements for the patrons to be able to go inside that business, but they have to provide those. And they will tell us at the time of application what they will do, because the site plan it's an administrative site plan. The site plan actually will say, here's where the food truck is going to be parked. Here's where the sanitary facilities are, whether it's inside a building or we're bringing out a porta potty. Whatever those are, that would be up to the property owner when they submit for the site plan approval.
I mean, and it's okay that they're going to have a porta potty or whatever sanitary facility, but my main issue will be the food handlers. They're supposed to wash their hand every time they go to the. So are they that considered sanitary facilities? That's on the
Food
definition.
handlers, they have to have it within the vehicle itself.
Yeah, but you are not supposed to use the same facility to wash your hands when you go to the bathroom and to handle food.
That's correct. They have
That's
to do that.
forbidden.
They have to do that through, that's a different animal than what we're proposing here. That's all part of the food handling. So when they
So
get their
who's-
license for that, they have to show us that they have that approval. And the only way to get that for those vehicles, sir, is to show that when they obtain their license, how they're going to do that.
And I have done that several times.
Mhm.
But who's gonna be monitoring this? Who's responsible to monitor that the food is at the proper temperature? Because it's three kinds of refrigeration and heating and the temperatures that have to be kept in a range. Who's gonna be monitoring
The
that?
same folks who monitor them now, which is the.
So it will be the same as a restaurant, the
which is-
inspectors will
Yes,
come
sir.
and check?
They're subject to the same standards, these vehicles, when they're licensed. They're subject to the same standards that restaurants are as far as food handling, all of those temperature things that you're talking about. All of that is not ours, that's actually part of their license. We just have to make sure that they have the license and they have the food handling license. That's all we can do. Other than that, that's way outside of what the city has responsibility or jurisdiction over.
So if somebody gets food poisoning from a food truck, the city is not responsible or liable or in any way whatsoever?
We have the licensing from them, and that is the extent of what we can control.
So
Same as a restaurant.
Okay, well, good job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. Kenny, you're up, sir.
We have an existing ordinance on the books right now, do we not, that this will proceed governing? As I recall, we passed it a few years back. A little background, let's say about 5 years ago, longer than that, we used to get a group of food trucks over there by Johnson and Wales. And it was very exciting. It was a very nice evening out for people. Come over there and might have been 12, 15 trucks. They would park in that vacant field, and it was like a neighborhood get-together. People really thoroughly enjoyed it. And there were rumors going around, oh, well, they got kicked out of Kmart because they were slinging dope down there. Well, that was a lot of crap. I had checked with my friends up at Station 6, and they said, no, that never happened. And here you have a $250,000 investment in some of those trucks, if not more. And no one is going to take a chance having that vehicle seized by slinging dope. So that was an outright exaggeration. I enjoyed that. It was on the next street over by Johnson and Wales. I used to go over there. And I'm looking at the ordinance. I see a couple of things here that kind of restrictive, might hinder that. And
If I may, before you get to that, under the temporary use permit, you're not limited. When you're doing it, like
you're
a
not limited
special
to the,
number of trucks you can have.
okay,
And that was a temporary use, special event permit.
okay. So you're not limited to the amount of trucks.
Not when you're doing a special event. So if you're gonna do like a food truck roundup night,
Yeah,
and you wanna have, you have the space to have 10, a nice assortment, there's no limitation. It's only when you're permanently or long-term hosting
Right.
that we wanna limit it.
because the other question, I was thinking, we got this ordinance supposed to be here on July the 8th, and I remember reading it, and I'm saying, I could see a lot of places where we could utilize this. One I said in Knights of Columbus have a function over there at the Czech Club. And I'm looking at number 3,
Sure.
must be located on a paved surface. Now, can that be waived? Because a lot of areas that I would think I would maybe want to have this, they don't have paved surfaces like the Czech, or up there on 146th Street, vacant field out there. They're not paved, and I, that might throw a little monkey wrench into the plan. I mean, is there a way we can make an administrative variance, or not, an administrative pass on that? Because you would be knocking some, great charities out of it. And it's just the paving, I understand the logic behind it on the individual truck pulling up, and I get that. I don't have a problem with it. But if you want to have a get-together, this kind of just knocks it out of the ball.
Well, again, I would guess that you're probably, like, for instance, the open field at where the new park is going to go in, next to the school. That's a big empty lot.
Yeah.
There's gravel in there or whatever. I guess Mr. Each's point is that if somebody wants to have a festival in there and they want to bring in food trucks, there's really no place that they could bring them in that's paved because of the size of the area and everything. So that's one area that, you know,
The city
that might have
attorney-
to be looked at.
Oh.
The other thing is, though, I'm wondering if it's because the fire department may not want a truck that's running on power on an area that's not paved, mainly because of its grass, dry grass or whatever.
Those were two, that's so
That-
far you're hitting two of the rationale. The city attorney's office.
Yes, yes.
I did just want to Commissioner Each in regard to the existing language code. He is correct. There is language in Chapter 11 that was adopted in the year 2011. This was when the food truck started, and the city did adopt a mobile food vendor ordinance at that time. However, when the Florida legislature preempted the city recently in this session on mobile food vending, this became moot. We were unable to enforce
Became
it.
moot,
So
yeah.
we've already notified all the city officials that the language that's existing right now preempted by the state statute. So we will at a later time be removing all of that from the city code so that it won't appear to look as a conflict. But this Chapter 29 language is a direct response to what the Florida legislature's done to preempt us, still give us the ability on a zoning side to at least have some kind of regulation. So just wanted to let you know the language that you're seeing in Chapter 11 that was there, it's not enforceable because of the Florida legislature and the statute, and it will be going away in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you,
So,
John. Ms. Warren.
so in other words, all the new language tonight is what we're asking for it to be adopted.
Exactly.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I can follow up on Mr. Each's question about variances, because since this is in Chapter 29, an applicant could apply for a variance reviewable by the Board of Adjustment for any of these conditions. And the question is that the procedure that you had contemplated, or
Yes, sir.
maybe it makes sense to have an administrative variance procedure so that staff can address some of these?
Well, currently, our administrative variance is limited to specifically residential R1 and R2. So, under the current code, they would have to apply for a regular variance, which they can apply for. There are a couple of reasons, one of which Chairman alluded to, is you're going to be running electric cords, and it's much safer if it's running across paved. The other issue is things that, you know, like when you park vehicles, the potential for any oil leaks or anything like that. You want to have it. That's why we make RVs. When we allow someone to park their RV, they have to actually park it on paving.
That's what, I'm sorry.
Like when somebody parks, we give the approval to park an RV.
Yeah.
It has to be parked on paved.
They have to be parked on a paved, yeah, I understand that.
So
That-
if
that's
you
a-
all would
yeah.
like to recommend a change to that section, that's what you're here for, is to review and
Well-
advise.
Well,
you
my
know,
only
make
question is
suggestions.
it may not pass, and fire inspector would have the last say-so on it. He may come out and go, no, you can't
I
park it there,"
remember
'cause
that
I've had
fee-
that happen.
Charlie, I
they're
remember
gonna-
the field over there on
130.
127th, 126th, 17th Avenue, roughly, and that's not paid. And the food service trucks were there. There might have been 10, 15 of them. And, I mean, we just had a great time out there.
It was a lot of fun to go to those food truck.
And you know, and I'm thinking, well, there's other areas that we could use this. Is there any remedy to that?
You all can either recommend not including that in the ordinance.
I think it should be on a case-by-case basis. I agree with Charlie. You know, safety comes first. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously. I mean, that's paramount. But I just see there should be some wiggle room in there to, if we can do it, fine. If we can't, we can't.
approved by the fire marshal, or if you wanna put that in there, if it's approved by the fire marshal, or
Well, yeah, I
something like
mean,
that, or a
the
fire.
wording could state that upon approval of the fire marshal or code, they would be allowed to, the exception would be to allow them to park on a grass area
Well,
or
you-
a
you-
non-paved area. It could be a dirt, it could be a,
So you
right,
gotta
yeah,
piece on it.
right.
Mhm. So what am I hearing from the rest? So when you all decide to, what if you all decided to do, you'd have to all agree to whatever recommendation that you would like to make in regards to that?
Certainly, we could open that for discussion again if anyone wants to speak on that.
Do you all agree that that's a good change,
Well,
or?
I don't think we
Mr. Hill?
can, I don't think it hurts to put the option in there. To
I
do
can't hear
that.
you, Mike.
I said, I don't think it hurts to put the option in there, as long as it's something that's approved by, some sort of authority, like the fire marshal or someone like.
So in other words, the action would be based on approval of
Some sort of
the
regulatory authority.
regulatory authority, being fire or health.
In this case, for long-term, it wouldn't be the fire department. They wouldn't see it. Temporary use, you do have to take it to the fire marshal. So under a temporary use permit, they definitely look at it
Okay.
under temporary
Okay.
use, but under the long-term, they would not see it. So, Mr. Howell, did you have something in mind, sir?
Well, counsel?
No, go ahead.
What I'm thinking, I know how difficult it is to deal with fire marshals. So
Is that a
counsel.
good thing?
Well, it can be a good thing for sure. But, when you're talking about food trucks and we can park on the grass or the asphalt or whatever, maybe there's some other regulatory authority that you think might.
So you can certainly include the fire marshal in here as a requirement, something like under 3 MFDVs must be located on the paved surface, except that gravel surfaces may be permitted if approved by the fire marshal, something like that.
Except that,
All right.
did you want to include gravel and grass
Gravel, yeah.
Yeah.
I-
Or-
Sure.
Or
or non-paved surfaces,
Or non-paved,
or except
because it could be dirt. Dirt could be allowed.
Dirt, yeah.
If it's just a plain dirt field,
Yeah,
Except
they may in fact
non-paved
say, that's fine.
surfaces?
Counsel?
may be permitted if approved by
An authority
whatever
Yeah.
authorities.
or regulatory,
You
Um,
can say the planning director and
Yeah,
the
let's do
fire
that.
marshal.
right.
Let's
Well, the only problem is that I know that these people are sometimes short-term, and sometimes these things are last minute, like with the brewery down here, when they decide to have a night, and so all of a sudden they want to have a food truck. And I know the fire marshal is up to his eyeballs and running around trying to do things, and sometimes it takes him literally days and days to get to any particular location. If we put the planning director or
So
someone,
Director of Community
our
Planning
zone,
Development.
someone, within the city that would be more easily accessible, to accomplish the same, feat.
So what we would say
Kenny,
is,
is that good with you?
Except that
Kenny?
other unpaved
I'm
surfaces.
sorry, Mike, I left my
non-paved
hearing aids
surfaces.
home, I
Okay.
apologize.
may be permitted by the community.
Regarding who in the city would be
Oh,
able
so there's
to
no
have the
standard.
regulatory authority other than a fire marshal. That was our discussion, and the plan would be.
That
that somebody-
I don't know who.
Well, no,
who-
the discussion was that
That's
the
the
city
discussion.
would, in fact,
Or designate.
provide,
I don't know who in the city.
All
Well-
we're trying to make a decision as to whether grass versus dirt versus,
Right.
just
Yeah,
the parking surface that the vehicle's gonna be on. So
this was.
I don't think we need to encumber the
Okay.
fire
Right.
marshal when we can.
Well, this
Okay.
was
Find somebody
specifically
locally.
requested by the zoning manager to be included, that it be on paved surfaces. So what I would suggest is that we defer it to the community planning director.
There you go.
Yeah.
all right.
There you-
And then
So
we can look
my-
at it on a case-by-case. I'm
My
sorry, go ahead.
concern is that there needs to be some standard.
For
So
decision-making.
under 5-1401, Division 14, parking and loading,
Mhm.
we can at least reference some standards. So
Okay.
And under that, there's a subsection that deals with materials.
So that was under 1401?
Yeah,
Say that again,
and
Gary?
it says,
What's going
it just says, driveways and parking areas shall be composed of asphalt, pavers, permeable structured grass, gravel, or concrete, not concrete strips.
Oh,
So
okay.
at
Yeah.
least there's some standards that,
Yeah, that seems
the
like.
problem is if there's no standard, there's,
Right.
you know, there's no test by which to evaluate the planning director's decision, and
Right.
it happens to be arbitrary. Somebody was challenging it, there wouldn't be a standard against which to judge it. So
Right.
So it would be pursuant to section
5-1401.
Mhm.
Okay, so, so when you make your, if you, when we get to that, when you make your motion, and any other recommendations for this particular one, number 3, MFDVs must be located on a paved surface, except non-paved surfaces may be permitted by the community planning director pursuant to section 5-14.
I know what,
Yeah, that
Because we
sounds
don't
good.
allow parking on grass
right,
Right.
now.
right. Okay, and I'm sure that would only be under a special event situation anyway,
Well, the
Other
long
than-
term
for the
is,
most part.
the long term, we believe that it's going to be very attractive. We already have people who want to do this on a
Right.
regular basis.
Yeah,
The temporary use one has already been allowed, and so that's the other reason we had it on paved surfaces, because we don't allow parking on unpaved surfaces, except for gravel. And
Right.
so by going back to Garrett, the
sure, because, you know,
51401,
I mean, we have to take in consideration them violating or no parking on swell areas, because the swell area would be a convenient place to park a food truck.
yeah, we
So,
definitely would not
you
allow
know,
that.
we do have to
anyway,
kind of
but-
address that and make sure that we're not violating our own rules that we put in
Well,
place.
that would be, that's
You-
already
you
in the
understand
code, that's
that,
already
right?
prohibited, so we don't have to rewrite that.
Right, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you ready for the
Um,
motion?
Yeah, I wanted to
I'm sorry.
have Dr. Besson weigh in on this, sir. Kind of a forgotten member
He
down
sits
here.
as like staff.
Down
He's
in the
down with
hole.
staff.
So, Mr. Besson, your thoughts, please.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
There we go, sir. Talk right into it there.
I don't think you'll be able it doesn't matter. I think it's more important than founded the frame. Enough.
Mhm.
That would be one consideration. Also, normally the trucks are under their own. Since MF is self-contained and not litters,
Mhm.
a couple of food trucks around that I eat in, they do run a water hose.
No, we were thinking, you're thinking about, in this case, it's hard connections versus a hose.
Permanent.
permanent, yeah.
Okay. All right, if the truck is operating in the parking lot of a office, the office being on in there, hours or closed, much truck foods in the evening.
And they can't host it then.
So cannot host
No,
it.
it's only during the business hours.
I see.
So when they apply for that site plan approval, those are the conditions that go in there, whatever your business operating hours are.
Okay, so if there's an office that closes, normal clock.
And,
So not every site is going to be
sure.
conducive necessarily to a food
Right.
truck. You can't,
No,
you can't
let's-
do, you can't just blanket control it.
Sure, if it's a school, for instance, that has classes till 9 o'clock, most certainly that would be under consideration that they would allow them to stay open until 9 o'clock until that session is over with, but that's it. There would be an understanding that once the classes are done with, then that operation has to cease. You know, I think we've addressed that in the ordinance by saying that it would have to be during business hours. That would be the same with a school that's operating classes up until 9 o'clock in the evening or an event.
Number 8, adequate sanitary. Employees of the now. So when the food truck goes away at night, how do you go away at night?
No, the porta potty is something, it depends too.
Okay.
I mean, because that
They're
will
not gonna be
be,
able to handle the
No.
dragging porta potties.
well, that's going to be something they have to make arrangements for. As
Okay.
part of their site plan approval, they have to show how they're going to manage this, whether it's a porta potty and then how the porta potty's moved. And it could be that, like I said, again, some businesses just may not be able to qualify to have them. So not every single business may be able to function that way.
Be able to, if post, be able to, how do you put it?
It would
Yes,
depend,
you
I
could
can't,
do that.
you could do that, but that would be part of the plan that they would submit as how they're going to manage that waste,
Okay.
you know, the sanitary facilities.
Porta potties,
They can provide a hand station, what they
Mhm.
call a hand station.
okay.
And it's, the porta potty company itself is responsible for keeping water in that sanitation when they are, because they have to empty that porta potty
Yes.
once a day. So if they provide the hand washing station, they're also responsible for providing towels, soap, or hand sanitizer along with the water. And
They have their own regulations.
right, they too do have their own regulations that they have to follow. So, and again, they rent those things, so they, you know, they don't want to have a piece of property that's can be rented to somebody else, tied up in one particular business, you know, over a 24-hour period. So,
What is,
We actually have a noise ordinance that
do you have a
talks,
decibel?
yes. The other thing that we don't want is when you, I know you've seen ice cream trucks. And when we were kids, that song going down the street,
Oh.
you know, it's some, what is that, whatever the song is. Things like that to attract. You can't have loud music, and we do have decibel in our code. But we don't want to say what is loud for you in a big giant field may be different than when you're sitting at a restaurant and you have a very small parking. So loud is relative to what they're proposing, which is one of the reasons why we just put in there sort of a generalized, but there's a max decibel that we deal with noise. And they have to meet all the noise ordinance that we have.
so that means I can't get the Christmas carols from the ice cream trucks in July anymore?
Huh?
Coming down the
What's that?
street, we can't get Christmas carols in July from the ice cream trucks around the neighborhood?
Well, this actually prohibits walk up and drive up. So
Okay.
that's kind of how that's.
Yeah.
So you don't also have the little food. I don't know if they do it here or not, but in the Keys, they would have these little trucks, and they would drive through the residential neighborhoods with fresh fruit and vegetables, and they would sell from the truck as they're driving down the street, and somebody would come out and buy from them. That's not allowed. You have to be placed somewhere. So your patrons come to you versus you driving around to your patrons.
Mr. Basin, go ahead, sir.
far as
Mhm.
the A size,
Yes, in our code, we define A-frames, and A-frames are standardized, by the way. They're about yay high. Of course, they like this, and they're generally about yay high.
A 2x4, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think our sign code actually addresses A-frames.
Right.
I'll look real quick while I give you that direct answer,
And-
sir.
you're allowed to also.
Yes, that's typical for them, is that they have, most of them always have their signage on their vehicle. Let's use vehicle, not truck. Yes, sir.
They require to have.
They're required to have all kinds of stuff as part of their licensing. We wouldn't typically ask for that, but DVPR, DOH, all of those who handle all those licensing, they require them to have all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, you have to be registered. You have to have your plate on it. So it's movable. So you have to be covered. Great questions. Thank you, sir.
All right.
It's why I like planning commission. You guys get the first shot
Okay.
at it and tell me what we can fix or
Thank you, Dr.
there's
Mason.
different ways.
All right, we have no other comments. I'll go ahead and open the floor
Mr.
for a
Chair.
motion for approval. Now, this motion would involve also as amended. So,
Mr. Held
Miss-
has a comment.
Yes, sir. Counselor?
So going back to the question of loud music, so I've read enough noise cases to know that folks have a standard, and we're going to apply the standards that are otherwise in the code. I think we should reference them. I guess it's Chapter 12, Article 4. There's noises and there's noise disturbance.
It is, there is a big catch-all, by the way, in this, because we didn't want to miss anything, that it says that they have to meet all the requirements of the code, the city's code. So we pick up all those other outside things, including matching up with the noise ordinance. But it never hurts to add those additional little references, it definitely doesn't. So
Agreed.
Mr. Held is making a recommendation to number 10, is that correct, sir?
Yeah, 10.
Mm-hmm.
Pursuant to Chapter 12, Article 4, or in
Ye-
accordance with?
Yes,
In accordance with
of the city code.
Chapter 12, Article 4 of the city's Code
Thank
of
you.
Ordinances.
So the items, if I'm correct, is item 3. We've addressed the paving issue, and we've made an amendment to that, correct, staff?
Correct, sir.
So based on whether or not we approve it, there will be an amendment to that particular item under D, item 3, I guess we could say. I don't know how you want to address that. And then also item 10. No other items other than those two.
You all did not give me any other comments on
All right.
anything except 3 and 10?
Okay? So, there you
Mr.
have it.
Held, would you
Are there
advise
any
them
other
on
comments?
the
If not,
final adoption of this,
I'd like to
I
make
mean,
a
as far as
motion.
motion?
okay, one second, I'm sorry.
I was asking Mr. Held to advise you on the motions and make sure you get the proper motion in.
Certainly.
Oh, I thought you were doing great.
He
Okay.
always does great.
Well, no, I want to make sure, Counselor, that we've
Right, so
covered.
your recommendation is to recommend approval of the ordinance with the 2 sections as previously discussed with
As
staff.
amended,
Right.
and I'll make that motion.
So Mr. McDermott has a motion on the floor to approve PC 1721.
Second motion.
And Mr. Medina seconds the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes
6A.
unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, for your input.
Thank you. This was great. This is why I love doing this with you all, because you come up with great things or great questions, and it actually helps us to think, that's great. Let's add something to it. So thank you for your participation. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, staff. Okay, so the next item was, now we've discussed earlier the item, well, first of all, any old business that we need to clear up before we move on. And then under new business, I believe we discussed that already and addressed that, so we could go ahead and move on to that. And next item is call for adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, and, yes, sir.
So in no business,
New business, you said under new business, sir?
yeah, I mean, it said something about ratifying the,
He did it at the.
Right,
beginning.
that was,
that
that
was
was
the
just
item
going
that
to be a
we-
report, not action by the commission, and we discussed that at the time we discussed the minutes.
so we're ratifying this?
I'm
That's it.
sorry?
No?
He gave
That's
you
what
the-
he said.
gave you
No, the
report.
city council did. We don't need to here.
So that's out of the agenda.
It's serving as a report, not an action item. It's a report from staff to the commission.
We went out of order. We took that a little bit earlier to advise you the ratification.
Yeah, if you recall, I had asked the council to go ahead and explain that.
You
part
know,
of it underneath it, so we could not have to address it at the end here. Okay, so
You had a motion,
That's
but I
it.
didn't quite.
now,
catch who made
again,
the
just
motion.
I'm sorry.
You had a motion for adjournment, but I didn't quite catch who made the motion.
Yes,
I thought it was,
Mr. McDermott.
who- was it you, Mike?
Mr. McDermott, and a second by, we have a second for adjournment? From anyone?
I second.
And Ms. Blumer, or Ms. Blumer
Got it?
has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.